Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Stories. Today we are going to answer the question, can I buy a home with a bad septic system? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have Mason Greenblatt right there.
Hey guys.
And I am Robert Greenblatt, also known as Papa Bear. First, let's clarify what is a septic system. So depending on where you live and what you've heard of, you may or may not understand it. We're not going to get into the technical aspects of what it is, but in essence, there's typically two main ways that water flows away from your house, whether you flush your toilet, run your dishwasher, turn on your sinks. The water has to go somewhere. When you have a public sewer system, those pipes exit your house, go out to the street, and then it disappears. When you have a septic system, it still comes together, leaves your house, and then goes somewhere underground on your property. And there's a whole bit of engineering that goes on, but essentially goes into a holding tank of sorts, and has to get pumped out periodically, serviced periodically, but well maintained. They can last for many, many, many years, in fact, decades. So in our service area, we come across septic systems, and part of a home inspection process can often include having the septic checked, because when a septic has to be replaced, it can be, if you're lucky, 20,000, but more like 25 or 30 if everything has to get redone. So we wanted to take a minute here today, guys, and talk to you about, can I actually buy a house if we know the septic system is bad? What are the potential pitfalls there? So Mason, can you elaborate a little bit for us on that?
The short answer is yes. Yeah, you can buy a house if a septic is bad. There's definitely some things that have to be, some hoops that are going to have to be hurdled through depending on the situation of each. But the short answer is yes. One of the big things is, if you're a cash buyer, that'll probably be the easiest way to buy a septic system. No mortgage contingency, right?
Yeah. So sometimes when purchasing a home with a septic, and you're using a mortgage, depending on the type of financing somebody is using, the mortgage company may or may not, but may require a copy of the septic certification, which essentially states that it is functioning properly. It's not always the case. It can be a little more complicated than that, depending on the financing. And sometimes they'll allow an escrow, but that's a little too deep for us. We'll get a professional mortgage person on here sometime soon to elaborate. That'll help a lot. So cash makes it much simpler. Does the title company care about the septic system?
Yes, usually they do. They don't care in regards to, I'm getting too ahead of myself. No,
I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking of well water. Let's not confuse septics with well water and the potable water test. So in general, from a septic standpoint, title companies don't really care.
Sure.
So we recently had a transaction on the team where we had a septic, but a bad septic, and it was disclosed by the seller when we listed the properties. The seller was not willing to make any repairs to the house or the septic system. However, he was willing to have the septic tested before we listed it, and we found out it failed the inspection. It can fail inspection for a lot of different things. That's a whole different conversation. However, we knew that going into it, and we knew that it would preclude some buyers from being able to purchase the house. So now here's what's really interesting. Sometimes, as you and I were talking, the bad septic system could also put a little monkey wrench into getting a certificate of occupancy, which is always an interesting scenario, right?
Yeah.
Depends on the town. Every town's going to be a little bit different. Like everything we talk about here, guys, it's often in general terms, unless we're talking about a specific transaction, but it could be different in your town also. So kind of here's how, so you might be thinking, well, how does anyone even know if there's a bad septic, right? And we tell the buyer there's a bad septic and we show them the report. Why does the town have to get involved? Well, here's how it goes with septic. Because septic is potentially a health issue, the Department of Health kind of is involved in this stuff. So what happens is when a home gets inspected for us, when a septic gets inspected, right, that report goes to the county health department.
Yep.
And then the county health department does whatever they do, and they issue a letter. And then that letter goes to the municipality. So now they have that. And just fast forward on that particular transaction that I'm referencing, guys, important to know that when we were trying to get the certificate of occupancy for that particular transaction, the township did give us a hard time, even though nowhere in their criteria did it say that we needed a septic certification. So ultimately, the buyer's attorney pressed the town on that issue, and the town said, yeah, you're right, because we had passed everything else. They said, here you go, here's your certificate. And it was a town that doesn't have a lot of homes with septic systems. So in actuality, they weren't even sure if you needed that. So cash buyer makes buying a home with a bad septic easier, right?
Hell of a lot easier.
We talked about CO issues, right? And then we talked about, depending on the type of financing, it may or may not be an issue. One type of financing where it probably is not that big of an issue would be renovation financing, like a FHA 203K, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because those loans are designed for renovations.
Yep.
So there's a system in place for that stuff. So here we go. We're going to loop back. Here's a test, Mason. Ready? Does the title company care about septic?
No. I was thinking about the escrow holdback on septic.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole different conversation also. Yeah, typically title companies don't care about septic either.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a wrap.
I think that's it. I think we'll come back to it again in a couple of weeks and explain a little bit more, but that's the basic understanding.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again for joining us, everybody. Again, we have Mason Greenblatt here.
Thank you, guys.
Please like this video, share this video, and stay tuned for more real estate stories.
Thanks.